Perfect.
So as folks are getting on, I will just extend a big thank you to Gina in just a minute. I'll share Gina's bio. We're so fortunate and thank you for providing us with this extremely important information. And I'll again share in just a second as folks are still loading up. So that's all good. Okay, and as folks are jumping on, I'm going to go ahead and just kick us off and say thank you to those who are participating, taking time out of your day. And it's always our goal to provide valuable information. And as you would expect, it is usually somehow, some way financially driven. We also want to thank Northrop Grumman Federal Credit Union. Hard to believe, but it's true. This is our 23rd year of partnering with Northrop Grumman Federal Credit Union. So you have me today. Liz is actually on site in the Chicago area at Northrop Grumman in the Rolling Meadows, providing a separate education. And we're fortunate today to have Gina join us from AARP. Some of you may recognize Gina from last year. We felt that the topic, as far as fraud and phishing and everything we're going to learn, to be so relevant, and things are always changing. So just a quick, to provide some insight to Gina. She is a senior advisor in the Integrated Communications Strategy Group at AARP. For the past 7 years, she's led communications for AARP's social mission work to educate older adults on the risks that fraud represents to their financial security. In addition to her work on fraud prevention, Gina also co-leads a public service campaign with the AARP and the Ad Council to encourage people to get the most out of their retirement savings. Well, that's right up our alley, isn't it? Here at Blue Heron. Gina is a graduate of UVA, University of Virginia, just down there in Charlottesville. What a beautiful campus that is. And thank you, Gina. Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and kick it off to you. You are the expert here. But as things pop into my mind, I hope you don't mind if I interject a question or a comment from time to time. So I'll go ahead and switch screens. Feel free to give me a nudge to change screens for you. And I do want to just share with those who are attending today that we're all vulnerable to this. My gosh, it's those who are the exploiters continue to get smarter, and we've got to stay on top of it. And I find the information extremely helpful for ourselves personally and for our clients. So if you know anybody, we are recording this, that could benefit from this education, please let us know, and hopefully we will be able to send that out to you. For compliance purposes, we're not able to take questions because we are recording, but if you have questions, I'll leave the last screen up. Feel free to contact us and we'll see if we can't get you some answers. So without further ado, again, my name's Margie Cosmerl, and this is Gina Wright with AARP, and we'll go ahead and get started. Gina, it's all yours.
Well, thank you so much for that warm introduction, Margie, and I'm so happy to be back with all of you and to spend the next hour talking about scams and fraud. I thought I would start off with a fraud landscape, kind of overview of the situation right now, then get into some individual scams and tips that can help you spot and avoid them. And then I'll wrap up with some resources that I think can help in terms of fraud prevention and victim support.
Great.
So if you have the next slide up, thank you. So if you feel like you've been hearing about or experiencing more scams than ever, whether it's calls or emails or text messages, etc., it's not your imagination. Fraud is on the rise, and the latest FTC data shows that there's nearly $9 billion in losses to fraud. And that's more than tripled from 2019. So this is really becoming a huge problem and bigger each year. And we think that this actually just represents a fraction of the actual losses. There's no one place where we're able to get all of this information. The FBI has a figure of $10.3 billion. Javelin, who does an annual identity fraud report, indicates 46 billion are lost due to identity fraud. So it's whatever the exact amount of money is, we know that it's huge, and we're really reaching epidemic levels. And AARP just conducted a recent research survey, and that was one of the questions asked, and the vast majority of consumers agree with that statement, that we've really reached crisis level with regard to scams and fraud.
Yeah, there's such a divergence in those figures from FTC to FBI to the Javelin. So even if you look at some average in between the 10 to 46, I mean, it's very big deal.
And one of the reasons why it's hard to get an exact figure, as you mentioned, that there's not everyone reports their experience. Some people are think it may not do any good, like, well, I'm not going to get my money back, or this person is, we think lives overseas, the scammer, and nothing's going to be done about it. Or some people are, feel guilt or shame and don't want to come forward and report it. So for various reasons, there's a lot of underreporting with regard to fraud. Which is why we don't have an accurate number, but clearly even at the lower level of $9 billion is still huge. So
for sure.
And we know it's a real problem.
Yeah, and if it hasn't directly affected us, I have to think that we're the minority. Somehow, some way, it has happened, and some
exactly.
to a greater extent and some to a lesser extent.
I think we've all either been certainly everyone's been targeted, and whether or not you've personally lost money, you probably, if not, you probably know someone who has. And if you actually, that leads us into the next slide, Margie, that I wanted to look at, who are the people behind the losses? I think there's a common misconception that it's mainly older people who are victims of fraud. But in fact, data shows that younger people do report fraud losses more often than older people. I think there's sometimes a sense of invincibility among younger people, thinking, oh, well, that would never happen to me. But that's not the case. I think the challenge is that older people do lose more money. So the losses are higher, and that makes sense because older people tend to have more assets. Maybe they have, investments, possibly a pension, certainly Social Security. Anyway, they have usually more to lose, and so in terms of actual fraud losses, it tends to be higher per person among older people, and that's particularly challenging because as someone who's younger and maybe still working, if there were some fraud losses, there's more opportunity to make up for things. But if you're older and you're already, have left the workforce, you might be on a fixed income, that losses, and especially if they're greater losses, can be particularly devastating.
Yeah. I mean, it does stand to reason, just like you said, the older, as people get older, they tend to build up their assets. And I just am thinking out loud, maybe our younger generations, they're quicker to the reporting, because a lot of times that's technologically driven. They can just click, they know how to report it. I think sometimes that's even an issue. Well, what do I do? What do I do now? And I know you're going to talk about that in just a few minutes here.
Absolutely. Yeah, and so why, the question is why are these scams so successful? And there's a number of reasons. One is scammers are really good at what they do. These people, think of them as professional criminals. They spend all day long doing this stuff, every day of the week. This is literally their job. So they've developed a really effective playbook. These enterprises are usually very sophisticated, transnational. It's a big business and run like a business. It's not back in the day, for those of you who've seen Catch Me If You Can and the Frank Abagnale character played by Leonardo DiCaprio, there aren't as many individual con artists now. Again, it's much more kind of sophisticated businesses. So they're very powerful, very effective. And then a final thing is one of the tactics used from their playbook is about disrupting your logical thinking. So they know that if you aren't thinking logically, you're more likely to engage with a scam. So what they want to do is get you into a heightened emotional state. So that could be something like excitement. You've just won the lottery. Or more often, it's fear driven. So you owe money. There's a warrant out for your arrest. Your child or grandchild is in the hospital and is injured, whatever. But it's some kind of crisis, and again, fear driven. And usually, when you get into that emotional state, your logical thinking, there's a disconnect there, and you're more likely to engage with things. And they know that, which is why, they've developed the approaches they have. So those are some of the reasons why.
On this, it also, and I'm so sorry to step there, but it just brings to mind, that we have had clients affected, and what they've shared with me is, let's say that somebody calls and somehow, some way, they convince them to let them log on to their computer, and they willingly go through that for maybe one of those ploys that you just described. And then they get into panic mode because they realize this is not what it seems. And this happened fairly recently with the client's wife. Luckily, he stepped into the room, and she was kind of already under, I'll call it the ether as you have it here. Unfortunately, he reacted very quickly, shut down the computer. He may have even just pulled the plug on it, but he reacted very quickly to stop that, and had to go in because they were putting viruses and whatever they do in place there. So it's just kind of taking that emotional, as you're describing it, there's so many emotions, and it's frustrating. It's just angers me that they do pry on our vulnerabilities.
Yeah, and if I think one of the main tips is, how can we disrupt that cycle that they're trying to, your computer's gonna, whatever happen to it if you don't give me some, pay for this virus protection that is actually not virus protection, but they're just taking money from you, or maybe putting malware or something like that on your computer. Or again, that there's an arrest warrant. If you don't give this to me right now, we're going to have to issue this, warrant, or that type of thing, of being able to break that cycle. And of course, they don't want you to talk to anyone. That was very fortunate that this person's husband came into the room right then and was able to kind of like, wait a second, there's something wrong here. But and sometimes they'll even say, like, don't tell anyone, like, we need to just do this right now. You don't have time to call your spouse or to check with your child or grandchild or whomever. They don't want you to do that. So if there's a way to, to try to disconnect, hang up the phone, and then talk to someone, or, again, try to reach that, whether it's a spouse or if they say it's your grandchild's in trouble type of thing, reaching out to them directly just to make sure that, that it's not a scam, basically.
Exactly. Yep.
So unfortunately, there's pretty much a scam for everything. And we could spend many hours talking about all the variations. But for the purposes of this call, we're just going to focus on some of the key ones that we're hearing about a lot. Those are imposter scams, romance scams, sweepstakes scams, and do me a favor scams. And then in the next slide, if you wouldn't mind queuing that up, we're going to get into each of these categories and, share some more details. So imposter scams are a broader category of scams. So as you mentioned, the tech support is one of those. Someone's pretending to be someone from tech support or from the IRS, Social Security Administration, your grandchild, that type of thing, or someone who has your grandchild. But whatever the ruse is, it's usually something is terribly wrong and you have to act immediately. And again, they don't want it, you don't be thinking logically at this point. And they just want to get money quickly. So they'll ask for wire transfer, just your credit card information over the phone, maybe a payment by cash apps, or even gift cards. Gift cards are a common way of getting money very quickly in the hands of scammers. So, so if there's a way for you to disengage, again, if it like the IRS and Social Security Administration aren't going to be calling you, unless it was some appointment you've already set up, and hang up the phone. If they leave a voicemail, definitely don't call the number that was left on it, because of course that's a number they've set up to be their scam operation. Look up on your statements or the website or wherever you have that information, the phone numbers, the correct phone numbers. Call your child or grandchild, whoever they say is supposedly in trouble. And again, try to break that, being under the ether moment, and to access that logical thinking again. And hopefully that should help people spot and avoid these type of imposter scams.
I will say that we had a client who was telling us about his mother. So she's in her early 80s, but she's still living independently. And she had gone to the bank and wanted to withdraw a large sum of money. You can see where this is going.
Yeah.
Because she got the phone call that a grandchild was in jail and needed money to be bailed out. And she, you think again that this isn't going to happen. Who would fall for that? But they're crafties. And in that case, it certainly wasn't a matter of getting on her computer. It was all through picking up the phone and acting again on the emotional side of things. Fortunately, the bank knew her son and made the phone call.
Oh, wow.
You know that your mother is withdrawing large sums of money. Now, I don't know if there was some authorization form on file. I know here at Blue Heron, we have something called a trusted contact. So if there's anything that we find concerning, we can contact that person. And again, these are just safeguards for whether it's our parents or whether it's our generation or what have you. So I just think it's important, again, all of this is to raise awareness, but also it's happening all the time. And I thought that one was gone, the phoning and asking for money to get the kid out of jail. No, this just happened last year.
Yeah, no, we get, we have a helpline, a fraud helpline, and we get calls every day, and, you know, variety of stories, obviously. But this stuff does happen all the time, and they know, you know, kind of, they can hone in on people's, vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
So maybe that person who, you know, was, targeted with this scam about the her son or someone being in trouble, you know, that was very effective for this person because of course she, you know, it was just a family member, and of course she was going to do anything for this person. And maybe if there was a different type of scam, might not have, you know, worked with this person, but then someone else, you know, would be in a different category. And that they're, because they can perpetrate these scams. So, you know, with the technology, just like en masse, they don't have to worry about getting it right all the time. They just need, like, I'm going to bombard with various things, and maybe one of these things will work, and only one of them needs to work then. And I did want to mention, I think that's such a great story about the bank, and the fact that they actually did that outreach. AARP also has a program called Bank Safe, where we work to train frontline employees at banks and other financial institutions so they can recognize, you know, fraud and financial exploitation of older people.
Great.
And so that's yeah, they are definitely on the front lines and usually play a big role in being able to identify and stop fraud from happening.
Thank you for sharing that. Again, I learn something new every time. So that's good to know that we can share that with our credit union friends.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you. So online romance scams are another, you know, common scam. And I will say that not all, we refer to them as romance scams, but in many cases they aren't romance scams. In many cases, they're friendships, you know, friendship scams. So sometimes these take place on, again, someone's looking to date, they're on a dating website, for instance. But other times someone's just on Facebook, and someone who is claiming to be maybe a former classmate or neighbor, or I knew you back in the day, or even just somehow connecting, you look like an interesting, you know, your background looks interesting, I have a similar one, or whatever. Someone just looking to connect. Or maybe you're playing words with friends, whatever the kind of the channel for connecting with you. They are, but of course it's an imposter, someone who doesn't, you know, isn't the person they say that they are. And they want to, you know, quickly build a relationship. It may be, you know, a romantic love relationship. It might be a good friendship. But they usually want, if it is on a dating platform, they usually want you to move off of that platform very quickly so they can just start bombarding you with messaging and not have risk having the, you know, the dating website identify this as, you know, an imposter. And there'll be lots of, you know, professing of feelings and kind of growing intense relationships online. And then they'll talk about trying to meet up. You know, these are people you've never met in person, but at some point, but they're talking to you, they're calling you all the time. They're you know, texting you, whatever, messaging you, emailing you. And then again, let's get together at some point, plans are being made, but then there's a problem. There's usually a problem that, you know, prevents them from getting, meeting in person. And then at some point, there's, of course, requests for money. It's the military are a lot of times people that you know, scammers will impersonate, because first of all, they'll pick some lovely picture of someone who's impressive and good looking and everything else, and seems you know, we all seem to trust of like, oh, they're, you know, they're in the military and this is someone you can trust, right? And of course, all that is they've, you know, the catfishing, they found pictures online and just taken them without permission and are pretending to be that person. And it'll be, I'm stuck overseas, can you send me some money I need to get X, Y, and Z, or, that type of thing. Or I'm working on this project and I just need this money to move this from this country to that country, whatever. So usually it starts in smaller, increments. And again, it could be a wire transferred or gift card or other forms of payment. And sometimes they'll even show you fake images of their bank account. I'm good for it. Check out my bank account. And you think like, okay, I'm not worried about that. I'll clearly get paid back. And then, at some point, again, they may start off asking for smaller amounts of money. If you give that amount of money initially, all they do is come back for more and more and more until, in some cases, people have literally lost everything. And these are not only devastating financially, of course, but with regard to romance scams, it's like they're emotionally devastating too. That you have people who literally thought that they had found a new partner. We're going to be starting their life off maybe with someone new, and had been building that together, talking about it. But of course, that it ends up being fake, and that's really, really hard to recover from.
Yeah, for sure. I'm thinking of a dear client whose wife had passed away, and I learned later that looking at obituaries
They do
and
that.
then
Yeah.
looking at the names and checking on Facebook and then making a connection somehow when that person is at their most vulnerable. And to your point, stressing some kind of need. There's a person who's in need of help. And in that case, fortunately, from our standpoint, we work so closely with our clients. So if things seem out of the norm, as was the case, a request for funds from investment accounts, we knew that was very unusual to the extent. And we have an obligation to report it, number one, and to bring this out to light. Now, the hard part was the embarrassment and how could this possibly happen to me? But the assurance that, oh, this happens to so many, and these are intelligent people. So again, it's a darn shame. We all say it. Gosh, if they would use their energies to put to good, the
Yep.
world would be a better place, right?
Absolutely. And you made a really great point about the, this has nothing to do with intelligence, education, anything like that. That anyone can be a victim of fraud, and everyone in all these categories, whether it's doctors and lawyers and, military personnel, teachers, people with PhDs, it doesn't matter. Like, people have all fallen victim. And one of the things that AARP is focusing on is to really lift that, shame. We want to change the narrative on how people talk to and talk about victims of fraud. And these are people who are victims of a crime. I think we've gotten to a point where it's like, if you your house was broken into, or so, something else like that happened, people would be, how horrible, and let me help you, and I can't believe this happened to you, and how can I support you? And sometimes, not all the time, luckily, but sometimes victims of a fraud are treated as, again, it's not a real crime, and somehow you were too gullible, or you should have known better, done better, that type of thing. That is your fault, and that's not true. It's a financial crime, and they need to be treated as such and taken very seriously.
Exactly.
So for the sweepstakes scams are another category. This is a little different in that it's actually supposedly bringing good news. You've won some money. And of course, it's a scam that they usually ask for you to pay for some kind of upfront taxes, fees, etc., before you get your winnings. And again, it's never just one fee, then it's like the next fee and the next fee. And the challenge is if you if you think you're going to get $1 million, if that's what this, lottery or sweepstakes was, that even if you end up paying, and again, they keep on going back to the till, $50,000 in fees, if you're getting $1 million, it's still, you're still going to be coming out ahead. So, and some people are just, it's really hard to convince them that it's still a scam, because I think some people start investing so much money in these fees that they can't, don't want to give up on the fact that this is maybe not right, and that there's an issue there. So some tips around that are obviously you're not going to win anything you didn't enter. And I think, there are clearly legitimate sweepstakes and lotteries out there. But when you're engaging with them and, reading the information carefully, obviously be careful anything that's sent in the mail, because I get those things, or email, you get emails, you've won something. And even something sometimes is a smaller thing of you've just won some Amazon gift cards. And at first I get kind of excited because I'm like, oh, good, I could use those. And it's usually not for a ton of money. I mean, maybe it's $250 or $500. So it's not certainly not $1 million. But even that, I'm like, oh, that's great, I could use those. And then you click on it, and then you're thinking you know what? I didn't enter anything. There's no way that I'm just being given something out of the blue. And so I'm like, okay, that's a scam. So I'm just gonna delete and not engage. So yeah, definitely be careful of those. And then the final, actually, I think there was one we missed. Oh, or maybe we didn't. Okay, great. So whatever the kind of the tactic or ruse to get you to engage with you in a scam, there's some common things that we see, and that's has to do around payment type. So gift cards remain a top form of payment in scams. Scammers like these, they are easy for people to get. Obviously, you go up to any, drugstore, grocery store, wherever, they're all over the place. And they're can be easily converted into cash. You just read the the numbers off the back, and then they're gone, and you have no recourse. And they have their money. So, be wary of being asked to pay for anything by gift card. It's one thing, of course, gift cards are lovely as gifts, and I give them all the time to friends and family. But if you're being asked to make a payment, pay your bill or pay this fee or, whatever it may be, you never want to do it by a gift card, because that's not a legitimate form of payment. And some people, sometimes they won't say gift card. They'll say, oh, I need you to get some electronic vouchers from the grocery store or whatever. And you say well, what are those saying? Oh, it'll say Google Play, or they'll, use one of the names of the gift cards. And not everyone knows what Google Play is. And so they'll think, well, that sounds, reasonable, because they're not familiar with it. So definitely be careful of that. There's more other ways of payment that you need to be aware of are cash apps. So we obviously these are legitimate apps for moving money around. Think of Venmo or Zelle or some of these other places, and they're great if this is like a friend or family member and you know what you're doing. But certainly if you're being asked to pay for anything, goods or services, someone you don't know, this is like an online purchase or someone's contacting you via email or the phone, you would never want to pay that way, because a lot of people don't realize that they don't offer the same protections as, for instance, your credit card. And that's usually the safest way to pay for things. Via Cash App, if you've sent money and it's a fraud, usually that's it. Usually you cannot recoup your money. And some people think that because Zelle is frequently associated with banks, that it offers the same protections as again, the credit card from the bank offers, but it doesn't. So just be very careful
Good
with,
to know.
and even when I do it with friends and family, I'm like always like studying it very carefully to make sure, because like I know once the money's gone, that's it. So be very careful. But yeah, so payment time is definitely something that can sometimes tip off as or be a good red flag if something's a scam or not. And then some other ways to avoid scams are trying to let calls go to voicemail. I know we all have calls we actually do want sometimes, and I think we see, you know, family members call, of course, but you have things like your pharmacy's calling or the doctor's office. So there's sometimes those are important. We don't want to necessarily let them go to voicemail. But if you can, that's, you know, a good way to not engage, you know, with someone who might be an imposter on the other line. And it's also helpful because, you know, now with spoofing, which is they have a technology to mimic a known phone number. So in other words, they're calling from Denver or out of the country or whatever else. They can make that phone number appear like a local phone number. Or even from someone you know, so that if it goes to voicemail first, you would at least be able to verify, you know, call the person back at the number you have, not the one that they give you, of course, to make sure that it's the person they say they are.
Yeah, it seemed like for a long time our cell phones were spared from the calls, but not anymore.
Yeah, now I rarely, you know, unless it's like immediate family and my like best friend or two, I usually let it go to voicemail. And sometimes I do have those like, oh, darn it, I wish I would have picked that one up because
Right.
I was waiting for a call back for something, but then that's not a problem. I just, you know, I call back and I'm able to, you know, connect with that person. But I get so many scam calls now on my phone, my cell
Gosh,
phone.
we're so bombarded. And this next one about the text, that one's.
Yeah, and that's where there's, I mean, we've been getting the emails for a while, but texts have really picked up too. And a lot of these, you know, we were thinking about how some of these scams in the past and how much things have evolved. And there used to be kind of like the real misspellings and the kind of the obvious, or much more obvious, I should say, you know, emails, that, you know, the Nigerian prince ones were famous at the time.
Right.
But now things are so sophisticated that they will actually have, I mean, I've gotten things that look like legitimately they're from my bank, that'll have the logo, it'll have stuff that looks real, or from Amazon. And then text now, I'm getting stuff too. We're trying to deliver your package. Well, like most people, I have certainly a package or two a week coming to my house. And when they said they're trying to deliver it, you know, your immediate instinct is like, oh yeah, what's wrong? I need to, you know, yes, I have packages coming. And then it takes me, you know, a minute or two to really study it and be like, is this real? Like, I don't know. And so the main thing is trying to avoid clicking on things. If you, you know, if it's something like your bank, you know, don't obviously click on it. You have the numbers and don't call any number they have listed on the email or text, because of course those are ones they've set up. You know, reach out to that person or that, you know, company with the numbers you have or the contact information you have, to verify if this is legitimate, because clearly if there's some issue with your bank, you need to know about it, but you don't want to inadvertently engage in a scam and give away your bank, you know, access to your bank accounts or anything like that.
Kind of seems like there's waves sometime. I know I had gotten one from a bank and it was clearly not a bank I used, but
Yeah.
it still was such and such bank. I don't remember what the message said. And I just mentioned it here in the office and somebody said, I got one from them too, and I don't use them. So it just, I don't know, just
Yeah, and
observation.
the thing is, they probably sent that out to so many people, and eventually they got to the people who do use the bank, who thought, oh my gosh, there's a problem with my bank account or something like that. And yeah, so I think that's there. Sometimes the approach is to just do this scattered approach, and even if 10% of the people engage, they still, because they can, you know, reach out so easily in an automated way,
Right.
it's still worth it. And then of course, monitoring your financial accounts regularly, and setting up access if you don't have, you know, online access. I think some people have thought that, like, oh, I won't create an online account, that means that I'll be safe. No one can, you know, get into my information online, or my accounts online. But the reality is that if they have your ID and, you know, are committing identity fraud, they can set up a online account in your name, and they have all your information, and so they could be taking stuff out of your account, even if you don't, if you yourself didn't set up an online account for your financial stuff.
Yeah, and I know here at Blue Heron, so many of our clients are retired and they are taking distributions, and be assured that through our broker dealer LPL, they're at the absolute highest levels of security. And you know, it's that toss up: are you going to chance a check going in the mail and that falling into the wrong hands, or even making it to you? And unfortunately, everything has worked well on that front. And just as Gina's saying, you know, on the statement side, paper statements, that too, those can end up in the wrong hands, as opposed to having the electronic side of things where you can pull all that very same information. And so just a side note.
And then, of course, passwords, we've all heard it, but then we're also sometimes overwhelmed by the number of passwords we have to keep up with, which is also overwhelming. So clearly you don't want to use the, you know, same password for multiple places, so that if there is some kind of compromise, it's not like they have access to all of your information. But I know that's also, you know, a lot of times a whole lot of passwords, and password managers can help keep track of that.
Absolutely. So those are apps that you can put your passwords in. Again, they have security associated with them, but then they're in that place. So yeah, I find it very helpful on that front.
Great, thank you. So we've talked about scams here for the last little bit here, and I just wanted to shift gears now to talk more about identity theft and identity fraud. So identity theft is when your information has been compromised, and we've all certainly been part of these larger company hacks and that type of thing, and we usually get that notification that your personal information has been or may have been compromised. But identity fraud is when that stolen information has actually been used. So it's been used to set up, again, maybe a credit card in your name or an account or that type of thing. So not everything that's been stolen actually gets used. And sometimes, you know, it might be years until it's used. So just because you have some kind of identity fraud associated with your name doesn't mean that happened yesterday or last week. That could have happened 5 years ago.
Interesting.
So what happens between the theft and the actual fraud? That information goes to a place called the dark web, which I'm going to talk about next. So if you think of the internet as this large ocean, and this is our iceberg floating in it, the part that the tip of the iceberg, as they say, is the surface web. It's what all the public websites, anything that all of us use. So we're, you know, reading the news, we're online shopping, we're, you know, checking the weather, we're doing all sorts of stuff like that. We're emailing. All that is, you know, the public part of the internet. The next part down, called the deep web, is I think they said it's about 90% of the web, so that's a lot of it. It's, it's legal stuff, it's data, it's stuff that's, you need a password to access. So it's, available to people who need it, but again, it would be password protected and that type of thing. And then the final part, which is only about 10% of the web, but they call it the dark web. So this is hidden from public use. You need special software to access it, although that software is free and available to anyone. But it's a great place if you want to remain anonymous. So people who might use this would be political dissidents or journalists or spies. But also, guess who else? Criminals. Criminals use the dark web. And they see that as a place where they can, anonymously buy and sell illegal goods and services. This is where your stolen identities will largely reside. And then will be sold, credit card numbers, logins, passwords, social security numbers, et cetera, are all for sale on the dark web. So we don't want to scare people. We want to empower folks to protect themselves. So there are some things we can do to better help or better protect our identities. And one of those is, knowing how to surf safely on public Wi-Fi. I think, like many of us, I'm definitely in that category of checking my phone lots of times when you're out in public. Maybe you have a free minute or two, or you need to look at your next appointment, or you have a wait somewhere and you think like, oh, good, I can quickly do some things I need to online, that type of thing. But you just have to make sure that you're being really careful about what you're doing. So public Wi-Fi is great for, again, just surfing the net, you're reading stuff, you're checking the weather, things like that are perfectly fine. What you don't want to do is do anything that requires like password information, logon information, your email access, all that stuff like that. Because this is a real treasure trove for hackers who've, figure out how to tap into the public Wi-Fi and, steal people's information. So one of the things I do is like I have the settings on your phone can either be set to automatically, connect to public Wi-Fi or Wi-Fi when there's, when it's available, or you can turn that off on your phone so it does not automatically do that. I also, if I were to be doing anything that, required passwords or stuff like that, either wait till you're home or in the office or wherever a secure location for you is, or I switch off Wi-Fi on my phone and I just use my data plan so that I'm not on any kind of public network.
Yeah, that's a big one, especially, post-COVID now, so many more are traveling, spending time in airports, you're waiting for a plane. And as you said, easy to fall into, oh, let me just check my whatever, emails or whatever. I just want to reiterate what Gina said, how important it is to turn off, even though I was just at BWI recently and you see it everywhere, free internet and or Wi-Fi, I guess. And I'm like, okay, that's my note to self to just turn that off.
Yeah, exactly. You want to be very careful. And if you go to the next slide, if you are out in public places a lot and really, depend or would like to use, the internet that's available, is to get a virtual private network. A VPN lets you, use access public Wi-Fi in a way that it encrypts your data and is safe for you to use. So, but that's, I think you only need that if you are really kind of out a lot. But if it's like the thing that I do where it's more occasional, or a lot of times it's like, you know what, I can just wait an hour till I get home. I don't have to, don't need to do it right now. A lot of
Yeah, but
times.
I'm glad they have these, the
Yeah.
VPN. And I mean, because we are, again, back to a bit more on the business travel, we had our IT guy provide us with the one that he would recommend, and it really is not overly expensive. And
Mhm.
gosh, it's sure worth it to have some extra protection.
Yeah, and that's and just some of the other tips there. Obviously, read, you know, some are free, but then sometimes they can be annoying, bombarding you with ads or whatever. Or just you just want to make sure you know what you're getting into, and that you have read the privacy policy. And then just a couple other tips to help you keep your identity safe. Shredding documents. I know that sounds maybe old school now, but the reality is people still steal information that way. That leaving, you know, just protecting your purse, your wallet, whatever. I used to do the thing in the grocery store where I would have the cart, put my purse in, and I'm thinking, well, it's right there. But then you turn around here to pick something off the shelf. And you know, my husband's a police officer, so he has you know, definitely gotten reports of people in stores, and certainly feeling that, you know, going to the gas station, that type of thing, and the purse or the wallet is somewhere, and again, the person's like, I was right there, how did this happen? But
It
you just want to be careful.
just happened to a client, bless her heart, grocery store, had the purse in the front, unloading the groceries, purse gone in a split second.
Yeah, it's really
Yeah, which is so
really awful.
And the person went on a shopping spree. I mean, thankfully, her credit card company reimbursed her for that. And
Yeah,
but what a nightmare. And just,
I know. And you
yeah,
think of all the stuff we have in our, you know, purses and wallets, and what that means to lose that is certainly, like you said, a huge nightmare. Even if we don't lose money, we we get a huge headache trying to deal with everything. And then finally, you know, you can freeze your credit with each of the credit bureaus is also a way of locking down your information. I've already talked about the other two, and I'm cognizant of time. I just want to,
yes.
like I mentioned, the AARP has resources and programs to help protect people from fraud. It's called the AARP Fraud Watch Network. And this program is all about empowering consumers with the knowledge and information tools they need to spot and avoid scams, and to get help if they've fallen victim or if they just have questions. So we have a terrific website listed there at the bottom that has all of our resources, tip sheets, you know, access to webinars. We have a biweekly watchdog alert that you can get via email or SMS. We even have a podcast, Perfect Scam Podcast. So lots of information available on our website. And then on the next slide, I also have a little more information on our Fraud Watch Network helpline. This is a helpline that is run by AARP. It is free. It is open to all. You do not have to be a member or even a certain age to access it. And this is a great resource if you have, you know, whether it's just like, I saw something, I want to let you know about it, because information, not any personal data, but just in terms of like the type of call, is shared with the FTC. So this helps feed into their reports on scams and fraud, and help identify trends, and you know, provide for better resources to deal with these emerging scams. So other times people, like I've had, you know, like, I'm like, is this a scam or is this legitimate? This is a tough call. I'm not sure. If you have a question, give them a call. And certainly, of course, if you've fallen victim, if you've lost personal information, if you've lost money, definitely they can be a great help in knowing what to do next, how to report it, what steps you should take, resources available, that type of thing. This is a unique resource in that a lot of, I think, groups that have, and government agencies that have phone numbers, a lot of them go to voicemail, and they're intended to like leave the information, and we'll record it, or if this, whatever ranks high enough, we might get back to you, but you aren't talking to a real person. And in all these cases, you're talking to a live person who is there to help you out and listen. And like I said, the average call time is like 20 minutes. So, they really spend time with folks and are there to be empathetic and not judgmental at all.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I applaud AARP for that. As we all know, getting a live person on the other end of the line is a big deal in today's world.
I know, it's getting harder and harder.
Yeah, sure.
And so this is great. And I just have that information all listed here. And there's one other resource I want to call out that's on this page, and that's our victim support. It's a peer-to-peer online kind of a Zoom call, if you will. That's really meant for people who need more than the 20 minutes of help on the line, that they might need, kind of a longer session to deal with their fraud experience. So that is also available. And like I said, it's a free resource and you don't have to be a member.
Yeah, these are tremendous resources, and we'll be sure to follow up with attendees with these links and the phone number as well, because I think that's good for everybody to keep on hand. For sure.
And we do have state offices. I just wanted to highlight that too. I work out of the national office, but we have state offices in all states, and some of our bigger states have multiple offices, and there are local events and that type of thing. So feel free to. We have that information on our webpage too. But we have a lot of activities happening in the state level too.
Great. Well, I know I could have kept on talking and asking questions and sharing stories, because it's so timely. It will continue to be timely, and we just have to do our part in being diligent and being watchful. Gina, thank you again. I've written several notes down, and we'll be sharing those, whether it's with clients, family members, friends, because it is just so important that we protect ourselves. So I also want to thank the Northrop Grumman Federal Credit Union, as always, for our partnership. And if you all have any kind of questions, whether it's related to today's topic, if there's other topics that you would like to learn about, please feel free to drop Debbie an email. You see her email right there, debbie.schilling@lpl.com. Debbie will be celebrating her 20th year with us at Blue Heron, so she's come to know all of you very well. Gina, I can't thank you enough. You're just
thank you so much. I really enjoyed this session. I appreciate the opportunity.
Great. And everyone have a great day, and